What's up guys, welcome back. So in this tutorial video, it's going to be about how to varnish your paintings to get the maximum quality, and just personally how I like to do it. Using acrylic, I like to go for a high gloss, but the same technique would work for a satin gloss or even a matte. So starting off in this video, you see me using a general purpose matte varnish by Winsor & Newton. It's just a can. You could get it at Michael's, basically any art supply store. And this is really useful for even if you're using it for a painting, or if you're using it for a sketch as a fixative for your charcoal or graphite. But I start typically with the general purpose matte varnish. This is done just as a protective layer. Another thing you want to be aware of is going to be the outside temperature and humidity. So when it comes to varnishing, especially with spray, you don't want it to be too hot outside or too humid. This is just a general rule of thumb, and it's because the spray, the chemical in the spray can simply doesn't spray as it should with a lot of humidity in the air. It bubbles, it becomes strange, it doesn't dry as fast either. So you do want a kind of clear day, an average room temperature day with, decent humidity. Not too sticky outside. Another thing too is you wouldn't want it to be too cold. And so spray is a little bit weird because you're not going to want to do this inside as well. So try to do your spraying like I am outside on a pretty temperate average day. So starting with the general purpose matte varnish, this is done to seal any sort of paint or any sort of ink that still has a tendency to bleed. This happens mostly for me with whites because I use a lot of white ink, black ink, anything like that that's a little bit looser of a medium that might bleed through when you're trying to get your varnish laid down. It's not a good look. It looks cloudy. It's troublesome. It doesn't necessarily ruin a painting, but if you're very picky, it certainly could disrupt the original vision. So I use that matte varnish to seal it all down, and it dries very quickly. So that's this first part. Now going on to the second part. Going to supplies, I use one of those rectangle sponge brushes, I believe they are. And some people use a roller, and some people use a brush when applying their first coat of actual liquid varnish. The kind I'm using is Liquitex Gloss Varnish, the liquid kind, not the spray. So that I think applies best, not with a brush, which you could for the first layer, but it might leave streaks, and it's not really the look you want for varnish. So for me personally, I use the sponge brush. Those are real simple, easy to find, and simple arts and crafts. What their actual purpose is, I'm not sure, but I use them to varnish with. You can see me using it, and it just sort of puts down that varnish and glides it across the way I like it to sit. And it does it evenly, and it doesn't leave any, it leaves minor streaks, but those get covered up as you apply second layers. So as I do it, I typically am doing the first layer, not so thick, but a kind of a thin layer of varnish to get it all covered. And it's going to look glossy, it's going to look good, but as you see as this first layer dries, you're going to see the patches that it didn't quite soak into the canvas with. So that's where you're kind of, this is the delicate moment where you're doing the first layer, and you're going to see the patches, let it dry some. I usually give it either 6 to 12 hours for that first one to dry. Now, the second layer is where you start to get the nice glossy, crystal clear effect that you see you see here as an example. Um, and it's a really lovely high gloss egg. And again, I do the gloss for acrylic because acrylic typically has a drier finish. It's not like oil, which naturally has a pop and liveliness. So that's what I found helps acrylic shine, literally. So for the second layer, same thing, same technique. Maybe a little thicker if you're confident you only need 2. Some people, you could do 3 layers, you could do 4, but you want to keep it thin if you're doing more. But if you got a small painting, you want only 2 layers, do the second gloss varnish layer rather thick. Typically, even my paintings, I only need 2, and maybe it's so you get better at it. You could eye how much you actually need, but I'm doing 2. So, as you can see with this final result, it's very shiny, it really lasts, and a lot of my customers will look at their finished piece and go, it looks wet, it still looks wet. How did, is it still drying? I'm like, no, it's finished. It's how this effect, this crystalline appearance, um, gives to the painting. So this is my technique for varnishing. I hope it helps you. I know varnishing's a little bit scary at first. Um, but once you get the hang of it, you got your little varnishing supplies. You put them in your drawer or wherever you put them. And it actually becomes something quite easy to do once you figure out how you want it done. Again, I imagine you could do this with matte or satin. Um, but anyways, good luck out there. Um, and be confident when you varnish, especially when it comes to bubbles. I do own one of those miniature like craft heaters, like a heat gun. I'll use it once in a blue moon if I'm feeling like the varnish came out bubbly or too strong to quicken up certain areas. But that's what you would do. You would take that across, you'd blow the heater on to wherever you need the bubbles to pop, and it does it just like magic. I forgot to mention as well, for the technique with the spray can, you always want to go up and down, vertical, across the canvas, across the painting, and then you want to go horizontal as even as possible. But with that general varnish, or the matte varnish, don't be, if you use too much, it's okay. It dries quickly. You don't go overboard, of course, but a little bit more is better than less. Your thick layers really come in afterwards when you start applying the glossy. Same too when you apply that glossy varnish, is you want to go up and down vertical and left and right horizontal, and that gives you a nice even coverage. You also want to varnish rather quickly. This is just because it's almost like gesso, but it's because if it dries while you're still trying to move it around, you're gonna produce a tacky, disrupted pattern on the varnish, and it's fixable as you go over again with the next layer, but it's something you just want to be aware of, not to let it dry while you're doing it. You want it all varnished and covered maybe within 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 5 minutes is the max, that's pushing it. But if really you find a bubble, a mistake, a hair, you do have more time than you think to be able to pluck it out and keep going. Sounds good? All right. And with that said, good luck to you. And yeah, see you guys next time.